I think I'm entitled.
You want answers!
I want the truth!
You can't handle the truth!
This is Larry Connors USA. Larry Connors USA.
I woke up this morning, got myself a gun. Mama always said I'd be the chosen one.
President Biden is now vowing to respond after a drone attack killed 3 U.S. soldiers in Jordan. The big question this morning, what will that response look like?
We had a tough day last night in the Middle East. We lost 3 brave souls in an attack on one of our bases.
Yes.
I'd ask you for a moment of silence for all 3 of those fallen soldiers.
Jesus.
And we shall respond.
The president saying we shall respond. Iran this morning denying any involvement in the deadly attack on that military outpost, but U.S. officials are blaming Iran-backed militants and say the drone appeared to have been launched from Syria. President Biden is facing pressure from some Republicans to strike back. Senator Lindsey Graham telling him to, quote, hit Iran now, hit them hard. And Senator John Cornyn urging President Biden to, quote, target Tehran.
That is a CNN report on the attack that happened over the weekend, leaving 3 of our troops dead, dozens injured. I let us play that clip of Biden because it was so mumbling and kind of almost indifferent, maybe just awakened to the fact. I mean, I don't expect him to get up there and rail and shout death to Tehran. I don't expect that. But I do expect a firmer resolve in his voice. The thing he said that was of most value is let's take a moment of silence to honor those killed and injured. Good. Now what? Again, this is my take. You may have a different take, but I believe, and that's why I chose to go ahead and leave that rambling audio. You could say the mics weren't placed well, and could say that it wasn't clean enough audio because of all the other cameras, these still cameras, click, 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 click. But a firmer, stronger voice would have been much appreciated by me and I think most of the nation. If you're going to get up in front of our nation and you're going to address the deaths of 3 Americans known dead, and some of these other casualties might be more severe, I would like to see you act like a commander-in-chief. Again, I'm not talking about yelling. I'm talking about pretty much the emphasis, direction I'm putting on it. Is that just my take, or do you have the same? We got a lot to cover because a lot has happened over the weekend. I thank you as always for joining us. Let me set the stage for today. January 29, 2024. This is the first of 2 hours of Larry Connors USA back-to-back. Reminding you when we're on the air, video of the show is streaming at News Talk STL Facebook, Twitter, Rumble, and YouTube. Also at Larry Connors USA, Facebook, Rumble, Twitter, and reminding you, if you miss any part of any program, you can always go to LarryConnersUSA.com or Larry Connors USA Facebook and find the program and either watch and or listen and or share. I see more of you are sharing. And your numbers, by the way, you're sharing and more joining. It's amazing to me. Every day, just on the feeds, just on one of the feeds, we're showing anywhere from 700 close to 1,000 every day because of you, and I thank you. And let me take a moment to tell you that following us, of course, today, we've got a great program coming up at 8 o'clock tonight. The Rob Carter Show will debut tonight after this hour, after our 2 hours. So you want to stick around for that as well. Wishing him well moving forward. I know he'll do great. All right, so back to the issue with the situation involving the attack upon our outpost that's right along Syria border, Jordan, is that a triangle mixed kind of watching traffic going back and forth. This marked the 100, and let me get the exact number, 168th attack on our U.S. troops since October 7. 168. Now, you remember we had a previous case where there were something like 20 soldiers injured in one attack in a facility we had, and then we were told it was 40. And then we were told some of them had massive head trauma. Now, I know what they mean by that. They never have clarified it. It could be that massive in the sense that they will never be able to do a lot of things in their life they would have done, much less serve the country. They're all in a dangerous place right now. This is a theater of war, and it's all around them. I want to switch to a question that was raised by MSNBC's Joe Scarborough to the National Security Advisor spokesman to the White House, John Kirby.
At what point do we actually go after the source of the attacks, Iran, and strike them where they are?
Well, I think I certainly understand Americans' concern over these repeated attacks by groups that are backed by Iran, Joe. I'm not going to get ahead of the president or his decision space. I mean, you heard him say yesterday, we're going to respond. We'll do that. Obviously, we have now three American families that got the worst possible news over the weekend, and now 30 more others that are injured, some of them seriously. We're going to take this seriously as well. We've got to do what we have to do to protect our troops and our facilities. What the options are available to the president, we're still working through that. He's still working his way through that, and I don't want to close down any decision space on his behalf. That said, we certainly know Iran's backing these groups. We know that they are resourcing, they're supplying. In some cases, they're providing information that allows these groups to do this. We're taking that very seriously. We don't want a wider war with Iran. We don't want a wider war in the region. But we got to do what we have to do.
We got to do what we got to do. Meaning what? What? Now, again, I'm not for telegraphing what we're going to do and who we're going to hit and at what time. But I, again, would like a little bit more firm commitment, just saying we're going to do what we got to do. Well, did I not recall President Biden right after October 7 happened, Hamas attacking Israel, and he said, for any nations out there thinking of taking advantage of this, I have a word for you. Don't. Look what they've done since then. 168 attacks on U.S. targets. And we responded lightly, hitting some munitions depots, empty barracks, so forth. We're ramped up a little bit to deal with the Houthis in Yemen, only to protect the Red Sea, cargo, merchants, and our own Navy in that area. And the other thing that hangs in the balance, if you don't want to hit Tehran and you do not want to possibly inflame everything more, start by putting sanctions back in place. Stop oil shipments going out of Iran to China, 1 million barrels a day, and the money they're getting from China goes right into all their proxy agents and their terrorist fights. Could we start there? We did have that in place under Trump. Biden canceled it. And they still have on the table talks about maybe working out a new nuclear deal for Iran. You don't even begin that discussion. And the second or third point I should add, Iran is never going to be your friend, regardless of what you give them. And there are other things we can be doing, but we're not. We're going to have more on this deadly attack on our American troops and the U.S. reaction in this hour, still to come in this hour, including Fred Flight's 25-plus years in Intel, CIA, Department of Defense, and others. But first, the push to impeach DHS Secretary Mayorkas. Is it legitimate, or is it, as the Democrats want to call it, just a campaign stunt?
And we are back with breaking news from Capitol Hill. House Republicans have just unveiled 2 articles of impeachment they're bringing against Homeland Security Secretary Alejandro Mayorkas. The first is focused on what they call a willful and systemic refusal to comply with the law. The second is focused on what they're alleging is a breach of public trust. The reason? Republicans disagree with how the secretary is handling the humanitarian crisis at the southern border. In response, the Department of Homeland Security released this statement, quote, "This farce of an impeachment is a distraction from other vital national security priorities and the work Congress should be doing to actually fix our broken immigration laws." Republicans don't want to fix the problem. They want to campaign on it.
And see, there they go again. I want to fix the problem, and it's simply shut the border. I do want to impeach Mayorkas, but there's a voice coming forward, a voice we often rely on. Constitutional law knowledge. I'm going to accept his knowledge on this. I don't like his decision and his statement. You won't either. But I do believe in the Constitution and the way he views this. Well, I'll let you hear it directly from him. Jonathan Turley, George Washington law professor.
The fact is, impeachment is not for being a bad cabinet member or even being a bad person. It is a very narrow standard, and even though we took language from the British, we adopted a much more narrow approach to impeachment. The framers rejected terms like maladministration to make sure that we confined this. And it's important to remember that we've only impeached one cabinet member in history, and that was viewed as a fairly abusive use of impeachment. It was an impeachment after that person left office. But, you know, past Congresses have recognized that there's a danger to this. Once you cross the Rubicon and start to remove cabinet members because they're not doing a good job. And Mayorkas is clearly not doing a good job. But it's the job that President Biden apparently likes. He's complimented Mayorkas. He's carrying out Joe Biden's policies.
And so he's doing his job. So no high crimes and misdemeanors, according to Jonathan Turley. And that makes me sick. But at the same time, if it's the way the Constitution he sees it should be read, then I'm going to stick with him. Sometimes you got to swallow the hard stuff. So maybe we are spending more time on impeaching Mayorkas than we should. But we got to shut the border down. And in fact, put it this way. We know with all of the activities going on in the Middle East, we know that open border is a big invitation to terrorists across the world.
The men and women who earn their spot on the FBI's terror list do so by associating with groups that hate America. They hate our values, they hate our country, they hate our people. Many of them want to kill us and drink our blood out of a boot. And yet they're coming across the southern border. These terrorist sympathizers, in some cases terrorists, they may be evil, but they're not stupid. They know they can blend into the masses at the border and come in unnoticed. For example, CNN reported a few months ago that someone who had worked as an independent contractor for ISIS helped smuggle more than a dozen people from Uzbekistan to our border. Overwhelmed officials at our border processed each migrant's asylum claim without triggering a single red flag. Not a single red flag. And then they released the whole group, every one of them, into the U.S.
Now, I have to ask you, that was Senator John Kennedy, Louisiana. There's no doubt some of the terrorists are coming from the Middle East. If they're terrorists in that region, why do you think they're coming here? Well, of course, Biden's open door policy. And I would rather fight those terrorists over there than on our soil. But what is the commander-in-chief willing to do?
President Biden yesterday called this attack on those U.S. forces despicable and wholly unjust. And now he and his team are working towards deciding how exactly the U.S. will respond. In a statement mourning the death of those 3 U.S. service members, the president said, quote, "We will hold all those responsible to account at a time and in a manner of our choosing." Now, the president so far has said that it was Iran-backed militant groups based in Syria and Iraq that were responsible for this attack. But the U.S. is still working to determine which specific group carried out this attack on U.S. forces. Overnight, Iran denied any involvement or responsibility for this attack, according to Iran's state news agency. And it really speaks to one of the challenges facing President Biden going forward, as he and his team have really tried to prevent this conflict from widening into an even broader conflict in the Middle East.
I am totally surprised Iran denies any involvement. And they support each and every one of those terrorist groups we're talking about. It really makes no matter what their name. They're getting support from Iran. If you go after Iran and you begin to shut down, at least start placing embargo again, sanctions around them, then that would shut off some of the money. It'll take a while for it to dry up, but it would. But again, we know they're terrorists over there, and they're going after our troops and every target they can over there. Now they're coming through our border here, and they're looking for good opportunities here, and this makes us more vulnerable every day. And as you were hearing in that CNN report, well, the president's still trying to decide what to do. Well, I understand that. And again, I'm not about letting the enemy know what we're going to do. But I am very much in favor of finding ways that you get their attention and you get it in a hard way. Now, to that extent, Major General Patrick Ryder says, we're going to do again, the talking point for the administration is what we need to.
We will take necessary action to protect our U.S. forces, no matter where they're serving around the world. I'm not going to telegraph or forecast any potential response from the United States because of this attack, other than to say there will be a response, and this kind of action will not be tolerated. You know, U.S. forces are in this region for one reason only, and that is to focus on the lasting defeat of ISIS. And so, again, we will do whatever we need to do to protect our forces going forward, but certainly at the end of the day, we are not looking to engage in a wider conflict.
Well, before this happened over this weekend, were we not doing what we were supposed to be doing to protect our forces? John Bolton, who served as a UN ambassador for the U.S. and also as a Trump national security advisor briefly, says we have been getting by simply by the roll of the dice.
Our military officers have been saying for some time, the only reason we haven't had a mass casualty event like this in the past few months is luck. And obviously luck ran out. If you want to establish deterrence, you don't just hit the proxies that are carrying out the attack. You carry out retaliation against the command and control authorities in Iran and some of their facilities. And just state one more point here. You don't do this in a tit-for-tat response. You don't say, well, they did this and we're going to do that. To reestablish deterrence, or maybe establish it in the first place, we have to impose enough pain on Iran that it outweighs what they've done to us and is sufficient for them to say, we're never going to try it again. So let's see what Biden does here.
In other words, not proportional. Hit them hard. Bolton's evaluation, who would handle this situation better, Trump or Biden, might surprise you. That's coming up before we wrap up this hour. And next up, Fred Fleitz, an expert in Iran and terrorism. Lock and load. Ready on the right.
You are listening to Larry Connors, USA.
Pigeons, they are everywhere, and they're very good at dive bombing freshly washed cars. Wellington Environmental reminds you, those droppings are more than a nuisance. They can be a major health issue, especially massive droppings on buildings or in parking garages. So who do you call to safely clean it up? You do what many hospitals, universities, public buildings already do. You call Wellington Environmental. Wellington Environmental has been dealing with all kinds of hazards for 35 years. Special people, special skills, special equipment. Wellington gets it done. So to avoid health issues ranging from pigeon droppings to mold to chemical leaks, contact Wellington. 314-644-4930. 644-4930. WellingtonSTL.com. Wellington Environmental. Your world cleaner, better, safer. Be well with Wellington.
Tim Jones and Chris Arps in the afternoon.
Horace, Americans individually have lost over $4,000 in income and over $7,000 where you have a household with both parents working.
It shouldn't be, it's the economy stupid. We should just say, stupid! It's the economy. Unbelievable the devastation that Americans are feeling.
Tim Jones and Chris Arps. Weekdays at 3:30 on News Talk STL.
What if everything you thought and believed to be true about owning and buying your home turned out to be wrong?
Straightforward, objective advice on the right way to make the most out of every dollar you put into your home.
We're the only country that has one of those. Most other countries, considering like Canada, the UK, they don't have long-term fixed-rate mortgages like that. They're all variable rate mortgages.
HomeWise with Michael Midget, Sunday mornings at 9 on News Talk STL.
Great news for my sponsor, Napoli Sea. And it's no surprise to me, nor hundreds who have dined there. The first time I entered, it was clear Napoli Sea is unique. The decor, the fish, imaginative cocktails, and of course, Napoli Sea is right next door to Napoli 3 in St. Charles. Napoli 2 is in Town and Country. The original Cafe Napoli is in Clayton, and I'm honored to endorse each of them. Visit any of the Cafe Napolis.
This is News Talk STL.
I've been holding it so long. I've been sleeping all alone. Lord, I miss you. I've been hanging on the phone. I've been sleeping all alone. I won't kiss you.
This is Larry Connors USA. Larry Connors USA.
Welcome back. My next guest we've had on numerous times before, and he's one of the first sources I go for when it comes down to what happened over the weekend. That is, of course, 3 American soldiers being killed by another terrorist attack upon this now almost 170 upon our troops since October 7th. Fred Fleitz is the vice chair of the American First Policy Institute Center for American Security. 25 years with the CIA, Defense Intel, Department of State, and the staff of the U.S. House Committee on Intel. Fred, welcome back, sir.
Good to be here, Larry.
So now what?
Well, I guess we should first recognize how lucky we are that there were 160 attacks against U.S. troops in Syria and Iraq, and there weren't any fatalities until yesterday. I think that's probably a minor miracle. How can there be so many attacks? Well, there's simply no deterrence. There's no fear of the United States under President Biden. We've now attacked the Houthis 8 times since the beginning of January. Why did we have to attack them more than once? And it just seems that neither Iran or Iran's proxies are deterred in any way. And I think there's going to have to be a fairly robust attack against Iran's proxies in Iraq and Syria. The same thing against the Houthis and enforcement of these sanctions against Iran. I know there's people talking about attacking Iran. I don't want to do that without Congress on board and a debate in Congress so Biden can explain what would the purpose of those attacks be. But I think we are in a very dangerous situation.
You've been very solid on that position. And a former colleague of yours and friend and had also served the Trump administration, John Bolton, said, we need to quit worrying about proportional response. We need to do something that will hit them hard and let them know we will not do that again if that's going to be our punishment. You agree with that?
I think he's right, but I think that attacking Iran is crossing a red line. I believe that Congress has prerogatives on declaring war, and even though we may not need a declaration of war, I don't want our president to be attacking Iran without Congress on board. First of all, I don't trust this president to do that. But even if Biden wasn't president, I think an action of this importance, this grave type of step, means that we go in together, and that's what I would want to do. I might add, Biden's never going to attack Iran. He doesn't have the spine to do it. But if that's what Bolton wants, that's what I recommend.
With congressional approval, you would recommend?
With, well, congressional approval, some type of buy-off, not just sending them letters saying I'm going to do this.
Right.
We need a debate where Biden sends representatives before Congress and explains to Congress what he's planning on doing and why. What's the strategy?
Now, before we leave that point and talk about other strategies that could be employed, I'd like your reaction, and obviously it borders on the political, but it also borders on the military and the intel that you've been in the zone for decades. Senator Tom Cotton, Republican of Arkansas, stated, Joe Biden emboldened Iran for years by tolerating attacks on our troops, bribing the Ayatollahs with billions of dollars, appeasing them up to no end. He left our troops as sitting ducks. Now 3 are dead, dozens wounded. Sadly, as I predicted would happen for months.
I'm afraid he's exactly right. Biden has looked the other way and has done very little to increasing provocations by Iran and its proxies. Meanwhile, we've given them enormous sanctions waivers. We try to pay them a $6 billion ransom to free American soldiers, American prisoners last summer, a $100 billion waiver of sanctions in November. Think of this, right after the Hamas terrorist attacks, we're giving Iran a $100 billion sanctions waiver. Congress, they say they're outraged, but Democrats aren't going to hold them accountable. This should be a bipartisan concern. And I think it's time for Democrats to say, we may disagree with our members across the aisle, but this is getting out of control, and we need to rein in American foreign policy that is just getting more and more incoherent.
More and more have been saying and had been saying, the moment we get American blood spilled, we will ratchet it up. That's talk. That's talk. What's the answer?
That's right. That's talk. But why did it have to come to this? 159 attacks, and now he's going to take some substantial response. And you know what's going to happen, Larry? He'll decide to bomb something, and he'll do victory laps saying, "Well, I really showed them," and we'll find out a couple of weeks later that it was nothing, that it was empty buildings, or we didn't hit anything substantial. I mean, that's what we've seen from this administration. The first attack he conducted against the Houthis, we've talked about this in early January. We were told this is going to make a big difference. And then we learned from the Wall Street Journal that before we bombed them, we told the Houthis we were coming so they could evacuate their buildings. And since their drones and missiles are mobile, they took them with them.
Oh, really? I'm surprised.
And the journal said this in an editorial. I can send you a copy of it. The journal said, this is a sign of weakness. It was seen as weakness throughout the Middle East that we did it that way.
Well, now, the other thing you and I have gone through is, the fact that they continue to have on the table trying to do some kind of Iran nuke deal. There is no way in hell we should ever let Iran get a nuclear weapon. And you told me the last time we talked last week, they're so close at this point.
We made enormous concessions to Iran over the summer as part of what I've talked to you about. It's a secret, unwritten deal. That way Congress can't oversee it. That allows Iran to enrich uranium to up to the 60% level, which is a hair below weapons-grade uranium. And it was an outrageous concession because, Biden wanted to show progress in getting the Iranians to cooperate. And it's also based on this mistaken belief that if we're just nice enough to the Iranians, they'll be our partner for peace in the Middle East. Obama believed that, Biden believes that, and I think you and I know it's complete nonsense.
You do not make friends with terrorists that want to kill you. And I'm looking at a statement here, the Islamic resistance in Iraq, declaring that any negotiation between Baghdad and Washington on the presence of U.S. troops will prompt more pressure on the occupiers. And that's, these positions we have over there are vital for the entire stability of the region. But again, you had John Kirby stating earlier yesterday and again today, and Major Ryder Smith also saying we're enhancing protection and we'll make sure our troops are protected. They are not being protected, or we would not have this at this point.
No, they're not being protected, and if Biden's not going to protect them, we should pull them out. If our troops are going to be sitting ducks in Iraq and Syria, and there's already questions about why our troops are over there in the first place. If we're not going to protect them, if there's over 159 attacks on American troops, and there's no sign of those attacks stopping, and American troops are dying, it's time to bring them home. We
got 3,000 stationed, according to the Pentagon, in I think that's just in Jordan. Is that correct? Is that your understanding? Or is that the Jordan, Syria area? I don't know whether that number's right or not. It probably is. Jordan is a close ally. Right.
And I have no reason to disagree with keeping a presence there. We want to keep Jordan stable and stand with a nation that stands with us.
Now, the other options would be when Biden came in, he lifted the sanctions. And Iran has been selling oil to China at 1 million barrels a day. And there's all the money they need in addition to what we gave them to fund proxy wars and anything else they want.
According to a Heritage Foundation study, as of September, Iran had accrued an additional $83 billion in revenue during the Biden administration than it would have had under Trump, because Biden is not enforcing oil sanctions against Iran. That was through September. He's still not enforcing them. So we talk about sanctions here and there, cut off the $6 billion, cut off that amount of money. Iran is getting this money because the sanctions aren't being enforced. And that money's going to Hamas. It's going to Hezbollah. It's going to the militias in Iraq and Syria.
Correct me on one thing if I'm wrong. We've got Shia and Sunni, and they're all being funded by Iran, aren't they? I mean, aren't they both getting money from the same source and going at each other in addition to U.S. targets?
The funding is really going to Shia groups. Iran has a relationship supporting some Sunni terrorists. It has allowed some Sunni terrorists to seek refuge in Tehran, for example. Some ISIS members, some Al-Qaeda members sought refuge in Iran. But in general, ISIS is at war with Iran. And ISIS was behind that attack at the Soleimani Memorial in early January. Iran attacked an ISIS headquarters in Syria earlier this month and attacked another group that I think was linked to Sunni extremists in Pakistan. So Iran has its own terrorist problem. And I think it would be fair to say that Iran is not just at war with us. Iran is also at war with Sunni Islam.
Well, one final point then, again, based on your intel and everything, here we have Qatar serving as a hub for all the Hamas leaders to gather and wine and dine while their terrorists are inside the tunnels still trying to kill Israelis and causing mass casualties among civilians in Gaza. How the hell does that happen?
Well, I think there's a lot of blame to go around here. As outrageous as it is that Qatar has been allowing Hamas leaders to seek refuge there and live as billionaires in really extremely expensive hotels, Israel has tolerated this and has used Qatar as an intermediary to negotiate with Hamas, thinking that they could keep Hamas under control. Now Israel's upset about that. A lot of Americans are upset about it. The U.S. has gone along with that also. I think it was a mistake, but I don't see an easy answer to that.
Fred Fleitz, as always, most impressive credentials and your analysis right on point. Thank you for your time again, sir.
Good to be here. Thanks, Larry.
You bet. Fred Fleitz, Vice Chair of the America First Policy Institute. We were talking about John Bolton. Coming up, you're going to hear what John Bolton thinks about Bush and Biden in the Middle East.
You can connect with Larry on Twitter at LarryConnersUSA.
I got an email which brought a smile. A woman named Mary wrote me, "We are purchasing a new roof from John Beal based on your recommendation. I thanked her then. I do it again now. Mary, I only endorse clients I believe in, and I've been a spokesman for John Beal for 10 years. It's all about trust. So if, like Mary, you need John Beal, trust me. Call 1-800-NEW-ROOF. 1-800-NEW-ROOF.
The United States Deputy Sheriff's Association is a national nonprofit and the largest non-governmental provider of services to law enforcement. The USDSA assists city, county, state, and federal agencies with free safety equipment donations and officer survival training, along with cash donations to families of law enforcement officers who perished in the line of duty, a citizen awareness program, and more. For more information on United States Deputy Sheriff's Association, please visit usdeputy.org.
I like supporting local companies that give back to the community. For more than 40 years, Vincent's Jewelers has helped raise more than $1.5 million for local charities. So I'm personally asking that when you're shopping for jewelry, give Vincent's a chance. And in turn, Vincent's will give even more to our community. On Olive, just east of 270. New specials every day on Vincent'sJewelers.com or Vincent's Facebook.
News, analysis, opinion.
USA, USA! That's a big game, man!
President Xi's really losing control.
People in China didn't ask me about people mowing each other down in a mall.
This is News Talk STL.
It is their responsibility.
He is a metastasizing agent.
We're all keeping a close eye on this.
Illegal immigration is crazy right now.
This United States is not being overrun.
News Talk STL.
It is a crisis at the border without question.
And NewsTalkSTL.com.
Planning a move? I encourage you to call McGuire Moving. And they not only do moving, they can provide you portable storage. They'll bring a storage container to you. You fill it at your time and convenience. They'll pick it up, move it where you want it. Here's their phone number, 314-241-0600. 241-0600. Website, McGuireMoving.com. McGuireMoving.com. Locally owned.
This is News Talk STL.
Well, I got me a gal in Pekin. She's a good old gal, okay. Oh, she's sitting there waiting by a window fan on a long, hot summer day. Oh, every day I'm working on the Illinois River, get a half a day off with pay. Oh, towboat picking up barges on a long, hot summer day.
This is Larry Connors USA. Larry Connors USA.
Well, over the weekend, of course, we had a lot of teams playing and in the final run for the Super Bowl. A lot of money being exchanged, especially if you're betting, and or you're one of those players who are getting extra bonuses. But I don't think anybody made more money over the weekend based upon the original decision, which is going to be appealed, than E. Jean Carroll. E. Jean Carroll. Her second defamation lawsuit closed Friday. New York jury determining that former President Donald Trump owes her $83.3 million for defaming her in 2019. Now, I'm looking at a piece written by Breitbart. I've seen others similar to it, but I'm going to cite Breitbart on this so you can double-check it. They point out there's serious concerns with her entire story, and there have been that from the beginning. But I'll share something else with you. After this ruling came out to give that Trump was going to owe her $83 million, defamation is very hard to prove, by the way. Extremely hard to prove. And even then, the way this case went down, I'm not sure it did. I think it got down to the attitude of the jury, the judge, and they just don't like Trump. Seriously. That doesn't mean that there are not some valid issues in their side of her complaint, but $83 million, that you talking about just piling on type thing? But John LaBoutiere, former New York congressman, the author of Harvard Hates America, Reaganite, never a Trumper, never a Trumper, who I had on just last week, as a matter of fact. That was just before, in fact, I had him on Friday before the verdict had come down on this case. He sent me a clipping that shows Trump Towers in New York, shows Trump Towers under new management. And instead of Trump Towers, it reads E. Jean Carroll Towers. Well, it is funny. And yet at the same time, it's just more persecution of Donald Trump. I mean, anything they can to make him look unviable. So here's a way, Breitbart, and again, I'm going to give you the source. It's not my material, but I also want you to know where it originated. They point out that her story, she originally came out with her story in 2019. Now, here's the key issue here. At least it is for me. She claims that Trump sexually assaulted her in a dressing room in the mid-90s. In 2019, she comes out with a story for the first time. Look, women who undergo rape, the traumas they experience and maybe the fear to come out and will they be believed, and especially if it's a powerful man like Trump or anything else like that, they may have a lot of reasons which are justifiable, not only in their mind, but justifiable overall as to why they didn't make a complaint then. But according to her, Trump followed her into the fitting area, shoved her against the wall, pulled down her tights. If this is going to get a little hard for you, I'm sorry. I'm trying to read directly from some of the material presented to court. Forcing his fingers around my private area, thrusting his penis halfway, or I'm not certain, inside me. Trump has denied it all these years, and he said in 2019, when the allegations first came up, he said it's just as bad for people to believe it, particularly when there is zero evidence. We're still for a dying publication to try to prop itself up by peddling fake news. It's an epidemic. That might have been the first time he used the phrase fake news. That was in 2019 when he was being charged with that. He also said, if anyone has information that the Democratic Party is working with Ms. Carroll or New York Magazine, please notify me as soon as possible. The world should know what's really going on. It's a disgrace. People should pay dearly for such false accusations. Now, again, on the Breitbart, the way they're writing it, despite the odd things about Carroll's story and a stunning, as they call it, a stunning lack of evidence, she was awarded tens of millions of dollars. Trump supporters say that just shows how scary the justice system can be if it targets one individual. That I would agree with. I mean, we're talking about a penetration and or rape in 2019. And let me get the dates here again. I don't want to misstate the dates. Made her claim in 2019 that it was in the mid-90s that she supposedly was assaulted by Trump at this New York department store. And here are the facts they say the establishment media does not want to know. The location of the department store, Bergdorf Goodman, has no surveillance video of the alleged incident. There were apparently surveillance cameras, if I understand correctly, throughout the store that would have spotted him and following her or whatever else. Then number two, there are zero witnesses to the alleged attack. This is her word against his word. That's not uncommon for a rape case. That doesn't mean she's lying or it's wrong. That's just not uncommon. She came forward, as they write here in Breitbart, conveniently, with the allegations while promoting her book, What Do We Need Men For? In 2019, which featured a list of the most hideous men of my life, which included Trump, obviously. She was unable to remember when this alleged attack occurred, told her lawyer in 2023, this question, the date, has been something I've been constantly trying to pin down. And again, this had been years. She began with 1994, then moved to maybe 95, maybe 96. Couldn't remember the season. The dress she claims to have worn during the incident was not even available at the time of the claim she made. She said, this is a dress I wore in 1994. They went back and checked. The dress wasn't even made in 94. Okay, so maybe she's confused about the dates, if you want to give her that allowance. And the Trump attorney said, this is the 80s. Is it the 90s? Is it the 2000s? Trump has consistently stated he was falsely accused. He has a right to defend himself. And she never came forward with these allegations over the years, despite constantly being open about sexuality, posting things that were very sexual in nature on social media, many of which Trump has shared, including remarks such as, "How do you know your unwanted sexual advance is unwanted until you advance it?" And "Sex tip I learned from my dog. When in heat, chase the male until he collapses with exhaustion and then jump him." She is also on one piece of video saying, "Rape can be sexy." This is not a very good witness overall. Then one attorney for Trump said there was a May 2023, her story is pointed out in 2023, was very similar to a 2012 episode of Law and Order, Special Victims Unit. In that episode, titled Theater and Tricks, an individual talks about a rape fantasy in the same department store where she claims the incident took place. She admitted she was aware of the episode but denied watching it. According to the New York Post, the similarities between what she claimed to have happened and the show's plot were amazing. I don't know if Trump raped her, penetrated her, or did anything of what she claims. But $83.3 million for something that happened 15, 20 years earlier, it's in New York City court. What do you expect is going to happen? And again, for women out there who truly have been victims of rape, this kind of story hurts you when you make a legitimate claim. Every woman who fakes and makes a claim of rape when there is no rape, she demolishes, undermines the true stories that are happening. But they're doing it for their gain or their purpose or their revenge, whatever it might be. And for the women who have been subject to that, they need help, and they also need proper compensation. And someone should be going to jail. But, of course, the criminal case was over here. They opened up a window just long enough for her to refile her claim so she could go after her civil damages. And they put $83 million price tag on it. They're going to appeal. She's going to lose it. She's not going to get all that, but she'll get something. All right, I mentioned earlier, former UN ambassador and former national security advisor to Trump, John Bolton, who had been a friend of Fred Flight's in the past. In fact, Flight's and Bolton were on the Trump team at the same time in the beginning of the Trump administration. And then Fred felt that maybe Bolton was going a little too far in some of his thoughts, and they just kind of drifted apart. He didn't want to get into it in great detail. Friends suddenly aren't as close as they were. That happens a lot. But again, Bolton, who had served as former national security advisor to Trump, was asked who is better to deal with the current threat in the Mideast. Would that be Biden or Trump? His answer might surprise, even anger some of you when we continue.
You are listening to Larry Connors, USA.
You want to give someone something which they will really enjoy? Give them a Cafe Napoli gift card. You pick the amount, and they pick which of the Cafe Napolis they want to visit. Cafe Napoli in Clayton, Cafe Napoli in Town and Country, Napoli 3 on the streets of St. Charles, or right next door, Napoli C. The Napoli gift card. It's the perfect gift for anyone, or your entire office. Cafe Napoli. Cafe Napoli.
This is Larry Connors USA. Larry Connors USA.
Neither one of them is. Neither is fit to be commander-in-chief at this point. Trump, as usual, is, as they say in Texas, all hat and no cattle. He has a large mouth and a large ego to go with it. Biden doesn't seem to get the point. I'm not sure Trump does either. The center of the problem in the Middle East today is Iran. They are the support for Hamas attack on Israel on October the 7th, for what the Houthis are doing in the Red Sea, for the Hezbollah missile attacks on northern Israel, and for these Iraqi Shia militia attacking American positions. If you want this to stop, you have to make the people truly responsible for it pay the price, and that's in Iran. As Al Haig, Secretary of State, used to say, go to the source.
Go to the source. Now, those are the words of John Bolton. He was basically fired by Trump as National Security Advisor. So you can say, well, he's just dishing on Trump because they don't have a good relationship anymore. He did fall back on a great Texas saying, all hat, no cattle. Big hat, but no cattle. You're not that much of a cattleman after all, are you? It's a guy sitting over in the corner with a crusty old rumpled up, what might appear to have been a Stetson at one time, got more dirt and cow dung on it than you'll find on the yard. And he has a cattle, not this one. But his view, Bolton's view, being that Trump's ego is too much into it and he's just not really cognizant of what's really going on, and that Biden is the same way in different degrees. I know that's what not a lot of folks didn't want to hear. It was, of course, this last Sunday that the U.S. Central Command announced that 3 U.S. service members were killed, 25 injured, a one-way attack drone that hit a military base northeast Jordan near the Syrian border. And there have been 168 attacks against U.S. forces, U.S. positions, since October 7th, actually October 17th. Quentin put down the numbers for me. I'd seen them earlier, and then I misplaced them. I appreciate him pulling them back together. 168 attacks against U.S., and how many attacks have we had in response? 8. 8. That is a 1 to 21 ratio. That doesn't prove you're going to do anything, does it? So for every 21 attacks, we responded once. And when we did, it was advance word to the Houthis, we're going to hit that. You better get your people out of there. Another place, maybe we were hitting an empty building anyway. We cannot continue like this. We cannot continue to show this ineptness, regardless of who's commander-in-chief. And we cannot have a commander-in-chief that gets up over the weekend and talks about this and kind of mumbles around about how sad and bad it is, which is clear, but not being a little bit more forceful, as I said at the beginning of the hour. If you missed the beginning of this hour, you need to go back and pull it up. And I encourage you then to share it with others. Because I want this country riled up entirely, because this is going to continue until we put a stop to it. You're not going to make friends with Iran. They're going to continue this. Republicans, of course, already blasting away at Biden. Senator Ted Cruz saying, day one decision not just to appease the Iranian regime, but indeed to enable the Ayatollah to attack Americans and American interests across the Middle East. And I would add to that, not just across the Middle East, but inside our nation. As I said earlier, they're coming across. They are utilizing that open border. It's a revolving door for them. I want to fight them over there, not here, but we're going to be fighting them here on our own soil. Secretary Austin's efforts to deter aggression, as pointed out by Senator Graham, failing miserably. He said, if they do not change their policies now, more American service members in the region will pay the price. And he wants to hit Iran directly and hit it hard. I hear what Fred Fleitz is saying. Let's kind of get on the same page, but all Americans should be. We got Americans in jeopardy, a clear and present danger. What are we going to do about it? Coming up, more also on the border deal, and some are saying, oh, there's a bipartisan deal. Whoa. Not so fast. And remember our pledge, one nation under God.
You can hear podcasts of this program at Larry Connors USA Facebook. Larry Connors USA Facebook.
News, analysis, opinion.
USA! That's a big game, man.
President Xi is really losing control.
People in China didn't ask me about people mowing each other down in the mall.
This is News Talk STL.
It is their responsibility.
He is a metastasizing agent.
We're all keeping a close eye on this.
Illegal immigration is crazy right now. This United States is not being overrun.
News Talk STL.
It is a crisis at the border without question.
At newstalkstl.com. Talk radio made in St. Louis.
Very excited for what you guys are doing for the St. Louis community.
For St. Louis.
Relevant local talk.
Saying what we are thinking.
This is News Talk STL.
You guys are awesome. I love you. And it's a tremendous honor to be on the station.
News, analysis, and opinion.
Thanks for us covering the local and global.
People, this is America.
We better open our eyes.
Really local, really good.
News Talk STL at 1019, 94.1 and newstalkstl.com.
Are you thinking about buying medicine online? A search for online pharmacies yields more than 20 million results. But which ones can you trust? Medicines bought from unlicensed online pharmacies can be dangerous. You may get a fake drug, your condition may get worse, or you may experience a bad reaction. Don't put your health at risk. To learn how to find an online pharmacy that's safe and legal, visit fda.gov/BeSafeRx. A message from the U.S. Food and Drug Administration.
Tony Colombo here, reminding you to join us for the Bluff City Outdoors radio show and podcast, where we talk fishing, hunting, camping, and everything else involving the great outdoors. Brought to you by Bluff City Outdoors in Alton, the Bluff City Outdoors Show, Saturdays at 11 a.m. right here on News Talk STL.
No matter how large or small your digging project may be, no matter how urban or rural, you must always call 811 before any digging project. 811 is our national one-call number, alerting your local utility companies to come out and mark any lines they have near your dig site. So before you do this or this, make sure you do this. For digging projects big or small, make the call to 811. Brought to you by Common Ground Alliance.
Hey, it's Katie, reminding you to subscribe to our show podcast so you never miss anything that happens here at News Talk STL. Get our podcasts every day on the show pages at newstalkstl.com, or just subscribe to your favorite shows on Spotify, Apple, Google, Amazon, or anywhere else you get your podcasts.
I drive my bus in a busy city. That's why road safety is so important to me. I know that I must slow down and be extra careful when I make a wide turn. Buses need more room than cars. Everyone can help keep our roads safe. Next time you're driving, remember to give buses plenty of time and space to finish turning before driving ahead. Let's all plan to share the road safely. Learn how at www.sharetheroadsafely.gov.
So many ways to listen to News Talk STL.
Come join the conversation. All you have to do is say,
Hey Alexa, play News Talk STL.
Welcome to News Talk STL, conservative talk radio for St. Louis.
What if everything you thought and believed to be true about owning and buying your home turned out to be wrong?
Straightforward, objective advice on the right way to make the most out of every dollar you put into your home.
We're the only country that has one of those. Most other countries, considering like Canada, the UK, they don't have long-term fixed-rate mortgages like that. They're all variable-rate mortgages.
HomeWise with Michael Midget, Sunday mornings at 9 on News Talk STL. If you find yourself feeling out of place in the world, it's comforting to know conservative values haven't been abandoned everywhere.
The far left wants to destroy conservative values in America.
This is News Talk STL. Welcome home.
Hey, it's Nick Schroer. To preserve this nation, to preserve the experiment in liberty that our founders envisioned, we must take a stand and fight. Join me Sunday nights at 8 p.m. only on News Talk STL.
Stand and fight with Nick Schroer. Brought to you by Missouri Wild Alchemy at MissouriWild.com.
Ackerman Toyota had a great 2023, so Jay asked me to thank you for all of your support. Loyal customers making Ackerman Toyota number one in St. Louis Toyota sales. Number one out of the 75 Toyota dealers in the region in Camry and Corolla sales. Ackerman has the lowest prices, great selection. Visit Ackerman at Hampton and 44 or online, AckermanToyota.com. Ackerman Toyota, for life.
This is News Talk STL.
You want answers? I think I'm entitled. You want answers? I want the truth! You can't handle the truth!
This is Larry Connors USA. Larry Connors USA.
A 168 attacks, Scott Perry. When is this president going to respond, and how should he respond?
He should first of all, it has to be immediately. And second of all, the Iran nuclear deal has to be off the table completely. Allowing Iran to have nuclear weapons deliverable by ballistic missiles to anywhere in the world is something that cannot happen. The United States has to be very clear about that. And so crushing sanctions, disallowing Iran to sell its oil on the open market, disallowing all the foreign entities that stand to make billions and billions of dollars on an Iran nuclear deal. They all need to be told immediately that is never going to happen, and then supporting the Iranian resistance inside and outside of Iran, which the Biden administration has cut the legs out from under, and the Obama administration for that matter, over and over and over. That's what needs to happen, and needs to happen immediately.
It does need to happen immediately. It needed to happen yesterday. It needed to happen 2 months ago. It needed to happen 3 years ago. That was Maria Bartiromo, Fox News, asking a question of Pennsylvania Congressman Perry about what are we going to do about these 168 attacks? How are we going to respond? As we were noting in the last hour, these 168 attacks, our response so far, 8. By Quentin ciphering, and I'm going to go with his numbering because I'm not very good at numbering anyway, except counting the money when I win at poker. That's a 1-to-21 ratio. For every attack that we gave them, they hit us 21 times. 1-to-21 ratio. That's we respond one time out of every 21 attacks. And when we do, it's either hitting unoccupied facilities or the government, our government, inflates what we did when it really wasn't what they claim it was. And in some cases, as my guest in the last hour pointed out, Fred Flights, if you missed the first hour, shame on you. But you can always go back and pull up the podcast. He said, we were telegraphing, we sent word in advance to the Houthi rebels, we're going to hit this facility, get your people out of there. That's not payback. And it was only a matter of time before we were going to have U.S. casualties with 3 dead. We've said it over and over again. We said it after the first attack that hit that base in Iraq, and we had at first report 20 injured. Then it became 40 injured. And then they acknowledged that out of those injured, some of them had severe head trauma. What that means, I don't know. They're not telling us. Does that mean they're going to be incapable of living a life unassisted going forward, much less being able to perform again in the military or anything? I'm not going to say they might as well be dead. I wouldn't say that. But the same token, their life has changed forever. And we've got them in this theater, and if we're not going to do our best to protect them at every stage, then what are we doing there? Which is exactly the point Fred Flights also made. He's been in national intel for 25-plus years, so he sees all this happening, and he said, we know they're out there. We know their plans. Sometimes we can stop them, sometimes we can't. They only need to get through one time. Which also brings us to the threat at the border, the open border. I'll deal with that in more details coming up. Glad to have you on board with us again. Here we are, January 29, 2024, second hour, Larry Connors USA. And when we're on the air for you every Monday through Friday from 6 to 8 p.m., video of the show is streaming at Larry Connors USA, Facebook, Rumble, and Twitter. And also on News Talk STL, Facebook, Rumble, Twitter, and YouTube. If you miss anything that you want to replay or share with someone else, and I always encourage you to share, you go to LarryConnersUSA.com, LarryConnersUSA.com, or Larry Connors USA Facebook. You can find it, watch it at your pleasure, listen to it at your pleasure, and then push the button to share. You can also subscribe for free. We do not share your information. We're just making it quicker, faster available for you. And reminding you, following tonight's program will be the debut of the Rob Carter Show, starting right after we sign off. Going to be another exciting program right here on News Talk STL. Glad to have Rob on board. Had him on the other day talking about what's coming up, and it's going to be a great program. You don't want to miss it. All right, so back to what we're dealing with right now. 168 attacks on our U.S. troops. CNN was talking about what may be happening next.
President Biden yesterday called this attack on those U.S. forces despicable and wholly unjust, and now he and his team are working towards deciding how exactly the U.S. will respond. In a statement mourning the death of those 3 U.S. service members, the president said, quote, "We will hold all those responsible to account at a time and in a manner of our choosing." Now, the president so far has said that it was Iran-backed militant groups based in Syria and Iraq that were responsible for this attack, but the U.S. is still working to determine which specific group carried out this attack on U.S. forces. Overnight, Iran denied any involvement or responsibility for this attack, according to Iran's state news agency. And it really speaks to one of the challenges facing President Biden going forward, as he and his team have really tried to prevent this conflict from widening into an even broader conflict in the Middle East.
But it has. It has widened, and it will continue to. And we've got U.S. forces spread throughout the Middle East. Jordan, Iraq, other places. And we're doing nothing against Iran. There are those, Lindsey Graham among them, saying, bomb the hell out of Tehran. Do it now. Others looking for an applied force, but not that severe, but enough to get their attention, hitting targets inside Iran, where we know they have training camps and so forth. And our another option is in combination with, or separate, sanctioning Iran again, shutting out oil monies coming in. When they're shipping 1 million barrels of oil a day to China and being paid for it, something like $850 billion in the first 9 to 10 months of last year, gives them more money to spread all their operations around. Now, John Kirby, of course, is among those representing the White House, as he is the National Security Coordinating Spokesman. On MSNBC, Joe Scarborough raised a good question. I'm going to give him credit for that. And Kirby's response, I could have written out before it was given anyway.
At what point do we actually go after the source of the attacks, Iran, and strike them where they are?
Well, I think I certainly understand Americans' concern over these repeated attacks by groups that are backed by Iran, Joe. I'm not going to get ahead of the president or his decision space. I mean, you heard him say yesterday, we're going to respond. We'll do that. Obviously, we have now 3 American families that got the worst possible news over the weekend, and now 30 more others that are injured, some of them seriously. We're going to take this seriously as well. We've got to do what we have to do to protect our troops and our facilities. What the options are available to the president, we're still working through that. He's still working his way through that, and I don't want to close down any decision space on his behalf. That said, we certainly know Iran's backing these groups. We know that they are resourcing, they're supplying, in some cases they're providing information that allows these groups to do this. We're taking that very seriously. We don't want a wider war with Iran. We don't want a wider war in the region, but we got to do what we have to do.
Well, what is that? We got to do what we got to do. Now, again, I'm not for telegraphing to the enemy what we're going to do in a time frame. I'm not for that. But you need to show the American people what the hell you are going to do, and they need to see at the receiving end of the message we send, we mean it. The U.S. has lost respect throughout the international community. It started losing it when Obama came in, and the first thing he did was go on an apology tour throughout the world saying, we're so sorry for what we did here, what we did there. You start with an apology rather than saying, look what we have done for you? And then, of course, following up with Biden doing pretty much the same thing and not doing much at all. But John Bolton, who had served as National Security Advisor under Trump briefly before they had a parting of ways, Bolton is hawkish. And Trump is considered hawkish, too, by many. As far as what he thinks Biden should be doing, here's John Bolton.
I don't think the Shia militia would have attacked Tower 22 without express authorization by Iran. If there were ever a moment, and frankly, the moment started about 3 months ago, but if there were ever a moment now when to show American determination and take a significant step to reestablish deterrence, the president's response has to be to strike targets in Iran.
Striking targets inside Iran. That will certainly begin to get their attention. Which targets? How severe? Bolton, as I said, he has a previous history with Trump as National Security Advisor, previous history as U.S. Ambassador to the UN, now suggesting we go ahead and target sites inside Iran. He's also believing what many in command have been saying. It is by sheer luck that what happened this last weekend hasn't happened before now.
Our military officers have been saying for some time, the only reason we haven't had a mass casualty event like this in the past few months is luck. And obviously luck ran out. If you want to establish deterrence, you don't just hit the proxies that are carrying out the attack. You carry out retaliation against the command and control authorities in Iran and some of their facilities. And just say one more point here. You don't do this in a tit-for-tat response. You don't say, well, they did this and we're going to do that. To reestablish deterrence, or maybe establish it in the first place, we have to impose enough pain on Iran that it outweighs what they've done to us and is sufficient for them to say, we're never going to try it again. So let's see what Biden does here.
All right, we'll watch and see what he does, but is it going to make a message clear to Iran? One thing Bolton did say, don't be talking about, well, they got 3 of ours killed. We go kill 3 of theirs, and we do it in a proportional method. No, that's not the way you fight a war.
I don't think it should be proportionate. I think it should be disproportionate. That's how you create deterrence in the mind of your adversary, that the cost to them of attacking our forces is so high they won't do it again. But to give a couple of specific targets, there are Iranian naval vessels in the Red Sea assisting the Houthis in Yemen. I'd put them at the bottom of the Red Sea. There are Quds Force bases in western Iran that are used for training and equipping these Iraqi Shia militia groups. They could be attacked. There are many, many air defense locations throughout Iran. Any or all of them could be targets. None of this threatens the regime in Tehran. Not that that would particularly bother me, but for those who are nervous, none of that threatens the regime, but it sends a very clear message. Now, we can go further up the ladder here if need be. Iran's oil facilities, as an example, its nuclear facilities, as an example. But I think this initial response has got to be very tough.
And if you're really tough, be it the nuclear facility or their oil facilities, and you make it clear to them, you do not want to mess with us again. And then there's the issue. There's the issue that the terrorist cells in the Middle East have numerous opportunities to enter our nation under Joe Biden's open door policy. Got an opportunity to do that. Well, if you're going to do that, we're going to have to look at it closer. And then Louisiana Senator John Kennedy says there is no doubt that they are exploiting our weakness.
The men and women who earn their spot on the FBI's terror list do so by associating with groups that hate America. They hate our values, they hate our country, they hate our people. Many of them want to kill us and drink our blood out of a boot. And yet they're coming across the southern border. These terrorist sympathizers, in some cases terrorists, they may be evil, but they're not stupid. They know they can blend into the masses at the border and come in unnoticed. For example, CNN reported a few months ago that someone who had worked as an independent contractor for ISIS helped smuggle more than a dozen people from Uzbekistan to our border. Overwhelmed officials at our border processed each migrant's asylum claim without triggering a single red flag. Not a single red flag. And then they released the whole group, every one of them, into the U.S.
Releasing them right in the U.S. And where are they now? We have no idea. They don't know where they are. Oh, but they were given a sheet of paper saying you need to return here in 6, 8, maybe 10 years for a court appointment. Right. We don't know where they are. We don't know what their scheme is, their timetable. It may be fluid. It may be a set date coming. There would be an opportunity. I talked to a friend over the weekend, and they're headed for a month-long trip in Europe this coming summer. Now, listen to all the places they're going to be going. And I said, I didn't hear anything like you're going into the Middle East anywhere. He said, oh, hell no, I'm not going there. I said, but you're still not concerned with all this continuing to escalate? You have to understand, these terrorists want Jews and Americans dead wherever they find them. And you get some, quote, lax TSA existing in some of the other nations, and in this nation where we're already just taking illegals and letting them walk right on the plane. As you heard Kennedy say, Louisiana Senator Kennedy say, these on our terrorist list, we don't know anything about them. We cleared them. They went on there. We saw them on the list, but we didn't do anything. I put out a call to all you leftists out there listening. Here's my call. We've got these terrorists coming in the country. Can you open your house for them, let them stay there for a while? Would you do that? You're doing it anyway. Well, the efforts are underway and continue to impeach Department of Homeland Security Secretary Mayorkas because of our open border. Now, is this just politics? A constitutional legal scholar comes up with an opinion that might leave you screaming, where the hell is justice? You don't want to miss that one. Lock and load. Ready on the right.
You are listening to Larry Connors, USA.
Question, do you know what vermiculite is? It is an insulation in the attics of hundreds of thousands of homes and public buildings. Looks like kitty litter, but often contains asbestos. Wellington Environmental is the largest company in the Midwest that can remove that hazard for you. Wellington has what is called the General, a powerful industrial vacuum that can suck vermiculite out of the attic. Hang on, there's something else you should know. Many of you might qualify for up to a $4,000 rebate. You should at least contact Wellington to see if you qualify. And here's something else. Wellington arrives at the time they give you, not sometime within 4 hours. 314-644-4930. 644-4930. WellingtonSTL.com. WellingtonSTL.com. Wellington Environmental. Your world. Cleaner, better, safer. Be well with Wellington.
Talk radio made in St. Louis.
Very excited for what you guys are doing for the St. Louis community.
For St. Louis. Relevant local talk.
Saying what we are thinking.
This is News Talk STL.
No, you guys are awesome. I love you. And it's a tremendous honor to be on the station.
News, analysis, and opinion.
Thanks for covering the local angle. Come on, people. This is America. We better open our eyes.
Really local, really good.
News Talk STL at 1019, 94.1, and newstalkstl.com.
As a truck driver, I've learned how important road safety is. I know that large trucks need more time and room to stop. That's why I always hang back and follow other vehicles at a safe distance. Everyone can help keep our roads safe. Next time you're driving, try to remember to always give trucks extra space when you merge in front of them. Let's all plan to share the road safely. Learn how at www.sharetheroadsafely.gov.
Ackerman Toyota had a great 2023, so Jay asked me to thank you for all of your support. Loyal customers making Ackerman Toyota number one in St. Louis Toyota sales. Number one out of the 75 Toyota dealers in the region in Camry and Corolla sales. Ackerman has the lowest prices, great selection. Visit Ackerman at Hampton and 44 or online, AckermanToyota.com. Ackerman Toyota, for life.
This is News Talk STL.
This is Larry Connors USA. Larry Connors USA.
And we're back with breaking news from Capitol Hill. House Republicans have just unveiled 2 articles of impeachment they're bringing against Homeland Security Secretary Alejandro Mayorkas. The first is focused on what they call a willful and systemic refusal to comply with the law. The second is focused on what they're alleging is a breach of public trust. The reason? Republicans disagree with how the secretary is handling the humanitarian crisis at the southern border. In response, the Department of Homeland Security released this statement, quote, "This farce of an impeachment is a distraction from other vital national security priorities and the work Congress should be doing to actually fix our broken immigration laws." Republicans don't want to fix the problem. They want to campaign on it.
Yeah, Republicans don't want to fix our border problem. They want to campaign on it. Well, if Biden had closed the border, there wouldn't be anything to campaign on. Not reference the border. I mean, we could campaign on what has happened prior to him closing it, but what he's done since he's been in office is unconscionable. And then the question is it impeachable? We'll come back to that in a moment. I'm looking at 2 pieces from CNN and I want to share with you. One, talking about Mike Johnson's razor-thin majority presenting an enormous challenge for him. Of course, we're talking about Mike Johnson, Speaker of the House, overseeing one of the smallest House majorities in history, dealing with government funding, fights over immigration, now the impeachment. Keep in mind, Republicans currently control 219 seats. 219. Democrats control 213. That's after Ohio GOP Congressman Bill Johnson resigned from Congress earlier this month, became president of Youngstown State University. Why the hell he couldn't have served out and held the position and then gotten someone in, help get someone elected going out early. I honestly would love to have him in front of me and say, why wouldn't you finish up your term? That job at the president's, that's going to continue. If they want to put you on the payroll early, fine. You can work out a deal like that. So negotiate. They want you, you make it happen. But this means between his departure, there are already currently 3 vacancies in the House. You got former Speaker Kevin McCarthy's resignation at the end of last year. That obviously is one of them. I didn't like him making a decision to do that then. And then, of course, George Santos got expelled. And then on the Democrat side, Brian Higgins of New York has announced plans to leave Congress. He's stepping down the 2nd of next month. There's a special election to fill the seat previously held by Santos. That'll take place the 13th of next month. Should be competitive, and it could end up being a pickup for the Democrats. Can't have that happen. We're looking at 219 seats now currently in the hands of Republicans. Democrats, 213. If Santos' position is won by a Democrat, you got 218 by the Republicans, 214 for the Democrats. It gets more narrow. And then if someone else decides, well, I'm out of here, it's not going to go the way I want, so I'm walking away. McCarthy, I'm extremely disappointed with him as well. Serve out your damn term when you're this close and this tight. It's almost like because he had to fight so hard to get to be the House Speaker, and then they went to the floor and rejected him, then I guess he said, I'm just going to take my toys and go home. I hate to say it, but that's exactly the way I see it. The good of the party, the good of the nation. Stay and serve it out. You may not accomplish much. You may just sit in your office, but at least there's a vote they can count on, hopefully, on the Republican side. And then I've got to remind myself, like Republican Hal Rogers of Kentucky got hospitalized following a car wreck earlier this month. His office has announced he has progressed in doing some physical rehab. Whether or not he can actually show up for a vote or not is going to depend. Hardline conservatives, again, this is according to CNN, showing they can hold major sway in the chamber even with such a narrow majority. But the tighter it gets, some of these so-called Republicans get a little weak kneed. And here we are dealing with trying to come up with a border solution. Yesterday, Senator Chris Murphy was speaking about what they could get done. Now, Murphy, of course, is a Connecticut Democrat, key negotiator on a possible border deal. And he said the text of a compromise on a bipartisan deal. He said, we're finishing the text right now. We'll be ready to send it to the Senate floor maybe this coming week. But the question remains whether Republicans are going to listen to former President Donald Trump, who's tried to tank the compromise. Again, according to the Connecticut Democrat, we're starting finalizing the last pieces of text right now. The bill could be on the floor of the Senate next week, but it won't be if Republicans decide they want to keep this issue unsettled for political purposes. Yes, there is a political issue involved here, but more importantly, at least for the view of Republicans and conservatives I know, is not a political game. It's a national security game. And I don't want to lose that game. We can battle over money for Ukraine, which, by the way, there's questions about hundreds of millions suddenly missing that were supposed to go to buy armaments. Oh, I'm totally surprised by that. But aside from that, we have to have unity on closing the border. Then we can deal with the other issues. Not just give Joe Biden more money to go down and process people quicker. What they want, what the Democrats really want, their so-called bipartisan compromise, and I haven't seen it, but what it amounts to, well, I'll tell you what they're saying it amounts to. new authority that allows the president to shut down the border between ports of entry when unlawful crossings reach high levels. As if he would. Reforming the asylum system to resolve cases in a shorter time frame. Expediting work permits. That's the next drop of the shoe. Right behind that, a general amnesty would be coming. California Congressman Barjon was on and being questioned as to what she thought. Were we playing politics with all of this, or is it a serious issue with the border?
It's just a political stunt. We know that they're going after the secretary because they don't agree on policy. That has never been a reason to impeach a cabinet secretary, and it hasn't been done, I believe, since the Civil War. As somebody who served on the Homeland Security Committee and used to chair the border sub, we never went after Nielsen and tried to impeach her when she was separating children and families, right? It was a policy disagreement, and that is what we're seeing happening here. Republicans can't govern. We know that this is a do-nothing Congress. They have not been able to govern, so they're trying to add more on the border to campaign on, and that's what this is, a political stunt.
They can't do more because Democrats control the Senate. That's the simple fact. The extended fact is too many Republicans in the Senate and on the legislative side, the House side, are too weak-kneed. But now what about impeaching Mayorkas? I have been pushing for that. I say, yes, he should be impeached because he violated his oath of protecting this country from all enemies, foreign and domestic. However, another voice we often bring to you as an expert has a view that is going to shock many of you. I didn't like to hear it, but I trust him in his knowledge, and that would be George Washington University professor of law, Jonathan Turley.
The fact is, impeachment is not for being a bad cabinet member or even being a bad person. It is a very narrow standard, and even though we took language from the British, we adopted a much more narrow approach to impeachment. The framers rejected terms like maladministration to make sure that we confined this. And it's important to remember that we've only impeached one cabinet member in history, and that was viewed as a fairly abusive use of impeachment. It was an impeachment after that person left office. But, you know, past Congresses have recognized that there's a danger to this. Once you cross the Rubicon and start to remove cabinet members because they're not doing a good job. And Mayorkas is clearly not doing a good job. But it's the job that President Biden apparently likes. He's complimented Mayorkas. He's carrying out Joe Biden's policies.
And that is the rub. And I stated that the other day. I said, I want to impeach Mayorkas, but Biden is the one who's letting it happen. He's not putting a halt to it. So whether you like it or not, Jonathan Turley is saying constitutionally, there are no grounds to impeach Mayorkas. If we abide by that, then let's cease and desist all that effort and focus on other things. Again, I hate to say let Mayorkas off the hook for impeachment, but as he said, you can't impeach him simply because he's bad at doing his job. If he's elected, then you can get rid of him with the next election. But he's not elected. He's appointed with the nomination from the president and confirmed by the Senate. He referred there's been only one other cabinet member that's been impeached, and he wasn't convicted of it. He's referring to Secretary of War William Belknap, 1876. Belknap was involved in some kind of trader post scandal that supposedly monies and supplies going to his pocket, his household. However, that was the allegation in the House. They got enough votes in the House to impeach him. Here's a cabinet secretary impeached for high crimes and misdemeanors, which it would fit. But when it came to the Senate, they did not convict. In fact, they acquitted him. So that's been the only other case in history. Coming up, I want you to hear from Louisiana Senator John Kennedy. How bad the border is, how bad it's going to get, and how we're all going to suffer if we don't do something sooner than later. Stand by, please.
You can connect with Larry on Twitter at LarryConnersUSA.
I'm always glad to have new sponsors, but I have turned some down. See, I only endorse clients if I believe in them. And I've been a spokesman for John Beal for 10 years. Through those years, listeners said they went with John Beal because they trusted me. And just recently, a woman named Mary wrote, "We got a John Beal roof based on your recommendation." Thank you, Mary, and all the others for calling John Beal. 1-800-NEW-ROOF. 1-800-NEW-ROOF.
No matter how large or small your digging project may be, no matter how urban or rural, you must always call 811 before any digging project. 811 is our national one-call number, alerting your local utility companies to come out and mark any lines they have near your dig site. So before you do this or this, make sure you do this. For digging projects big or small, make the call to 811, brought to you by Common Ground Alliance.
Sometimes you want to do something extra special for someone. Vincent's Jewelers can help you. Maybe you want to do something for yourself. Mark a date, something you accomplished. It doesn't have to be anything really expensive, but it has to mean something, now and for the future. Vincent's, locally owned, just ask for the chance to work with you, as they have with me, on Olive, just east of 270. Every day, new specials at vincentsjewelers.com or Vincent's Facebook.
The United States Deputy Sheriff's Association is a national nonprofit and the largest non-governmental provider of services to law enforcement. The USDSA assists city, county, state, and federal agencies with free safety equipment donations and officer survival training, along with cash donations to families of law enforcement officers who perished in the line of duty, a citizen awareness program, and more. For more information on United States Deputy Sheriff's Association, please visit usdeputy.org.
One of the 5 most traumatic experiences in life is moving. I can assure you that McGuire Moving can help ease that pressure. Moving into a new home or a new business, locally, internationally. McGuire is rated number 1. More than 80 years of experience. Free estimate, call McGuire, 314-241-0600. 241-0600. McGuireMoving.com.
This is News Talk STL.
I'm gonna run away to duck, gun, carry, make camp where the land is bare. I'm gonna run away to duck, gun, carry, ain't no one gonna find me there. Ain't no one gonna find me there. Found trouble in the town I come from, left 6 months ago or so. I had to run from the man I wronged there.
This is Larry Connors USA. Larry Connors USA.
You can cut the irony. The cynical might say the hypocrisy. I would rather say the irony. You can cut the irony with a knife. After years of presenting themselves as sanctuary cities, officials, many of them well-intentioned, throughout our country learned in 2023, Mr. President, that the crisis at our southern border is not just a crisis for southern states, like Texas and Arizona, ain't even my state. It's an American crisis.
It is an American crisis, but it took Governors Abbott and DeSantis to begin to ship illegals into the northern states, New York City, D.C., Chicago, and suddenly they start crying out, "Oh, no mas, no mas. We can't handle them. New York City, we can't handle 160,000 illegals." You can't handle 160,000 illegals. And yet you're a sanctuary city. And many of them have been reconsidering calling themselves sanctuary cities or states because of that. See, in the beginning of California, I mean, you don't have to go across the Rio Grande Valley. You just go right into California. And it was a sanctuary state and sanctuary city. And other blue cities and mayors and governors began to jump on and say, yeah, we want to be one too. And now suddenly, yeah, really don't want to be, but how do we get out of this? They have, the old proverbial, painted themselves into the corner. And then over the weekend, the Biden administration on Friday, and this is typical of any administration, it's not just Biden. If they have some bad news they really don't want to get a lot of coverage on, what they do is what they call the Friday night dump. Now, I don't know what you're thinking of when I say that. It has nothing to do with body functions, although in a way it might. The Friday night dump from the Biden administration last Friday, they issued the monthly Southwest Land Border Encounters report, coming out later than normal because hold it till Friday, because maybe not too many people will see it. And if they see it, they report on it, well, a lot of people are involved in other things. They won't be watching, especially with the football games that were on over the weekend and other things. They just won't catch it. Well, you might have missed it, but I'm here serving you every day. As you know, I begin with a salute to you. I'm reporting for duty to you every day. And I do see this, and I want to share it with you. This Friday night dump. The report released Friday, late Friday, shows Border Patrol agents along the southwest border with Mexico apprehended 249,785 illegals crossing the border in December between the ports of entry. This is up by 12% of those apprehended 1 year ago. This now means the southwest border total for the first quarter of fiscal year 24, 630,000 migrant encounters. More than half of those, you want to do some quick ciphering? Let's make it 325,000, classified as single adults. Could there be guys, young men, maybe older men, just want to come to America and have a better life, earn money, and send back to their families? Could be. Could they also be coming here to run drugs, traffic children? That's very likely. Could they be coming in to be part of a terrorist cell at some future date? Certainly likely. The remainder of those were family units with 270,000 of the 630,000. Then you have the unaccompanied minors at 35,000. By minors, they're looking, I think they have actually adjusted the age to maybe 19 as a minor. Maybe it's 18, but either way, that's 35,000 that are considered minors. They just kind of came on their own. Now, how do you think they got here? Well, they didn't get here on their own. Drug cartels brought them, maybe trafficking them. Maybe they're with some of the, quote, families or the single men, but then they separate once they get to the border. The number of Chinese migrants encountered at the southwest border also continues to rise. In December, agents encountering nearly 6,000. During the first quarter of fiscal year 24, 15,000. First quarter, 15,000 compares to more than 24,000 in all of 23. Which takes us back to Louisiana Senator John Kennedy on who these folks are that are coming across our border.
President Biden's border policies are not just a human rights disaster, though they certainly are. But his policies have also provided the perfect cover for terrorist sympathizers, for child sex offenders, for cartel associates to enter the country illegally. All you have to do is mix in, because nobody's checking anybody. The numbers that I'm about to give you will make you throw up. Border Patrol apprehended 169 members of the FBI's terrorist watch list attempting to cross the southern border illegally in 2023 alone. 169. It only takes one terrorist. That's more than 10 times the number of potential terrorists that Border Patrol detained in the 4 years before President Biden took office.
And keep in mind, those are the ones they actually encountered and apprehended. The vast getaways, no one really has a good number on those. They might spot them by binoculars at night crossing an area where there are no agents available to grab them quickly. They might be caught on a camera set up that sometimes farmers will set up to protect their stock from coyotes. And by coyotes, I'm talking about the four-legged kind, but also coyotes, the two-legged kind that bring people across the border. And then in the midst of this, before I let Senator Kennedy continue about these terrorists that are coming across and who they really are, I'm looking at a piece of what Joe Biden has now decided to do. They decided as of January 26th, let me check my date again here. Let me look at my calendar and everything. This date is, ta-da, I got it right here in front of me. I always want to double check. Today is, as I told you in the beginning, this is the 29th. On the 26th, again last Friday, word is released for the Biden administration. They are going to stop approving liquefied natural gas, LNG, exports out of Texas. Texas has a vast amount of that, and they ship it out. It's the largest gas exporter of natural gas in the nation, third in the world. That money is used to pay and fund education. And the Biden administration sent word to the Texas Land Commissioner, we're going to stop approving your LNG exports for a time. That just happened to coincide with their decision that if we're not going to be allowed access to Shelby Park and Eagle Pass, and you're not going to tear down that razor wire like you've been ordered to, and you're going to continue to battle us on border control, then we're just going to shut down your export of liquid natural gas. And the Texas Land Commissioner, Don Buckingham, says this looks more like retaliation than a sound policy decision. Let me add to her thoughts. This is not just looking like retaliation. This is retaliation. You're punishing the state of Texas on a vast source of material money revenue they have coming in. And actually, you're punishing those who rely on liquid natural gas in other states, buying it from Texas. And I will guarantee you, without even looking down the list of who they are exporting to, you're going to find several blue cities and states on that list. So, yeah, it's retaliation. Cutting off money for education for kids. Where are the leftists hollering, oh, you can't do that. You're cheating kids out of their education. Oh, that's right. I'm sorry. Many on the left don't care about educating our children anymore. They care more about indoctrinating them. Well, that's going to give you less money to indoctrinate. How's that? How's that sit with you? I want to go back to Senator John Kennedy speaking from the well of the Senate as to the people that are coming across, what we do know about them.
The men and women who earn their spot on the FBI's terror list do so by associating with groups that hate America. They hate our values. They hate our country. They hate our people. Many of them want to kill us and drink our blood out of a boot. And yet they're coming across the southern border. These terrorist sympathizers, in some cases terrorists, they may be evil, but they're not stupid. They know they can blend into the masses at the border and come in unnoticed. For example, CNN reported a few months ago that someone who had worked as an independent contractor for ISIS helped smuggle more than a dozen people from Uzbekistan to our border. Overwhelmed officials at our border processed each migrant's asylum claim without triggering a single red flag. Not a single red flag. And then they released the whole group, every one of them, into the U.S.
You almost want to laugh, cry, shout. How the hell can that happen? Because of this administration. And many of them are coming from the Middle East where they're terrorists already. So when they're coming here, they're going to continue to be terrorists. John Bolton, I had him in the last hour. I want to replay this because I think it's that vital in his assessment as to Joe Biden and Donald Trump when it comes to handling what's going on in the Middle East. Now, John Bolton served as a UN ambassador, was also an advisor to Trump briefly before they came to a falling out. And he was being asked, who would you prefer and who you think would handle what's happening in the Middle East better, Trump or Biden?
Neither one of them is. Neither is fit to be commander-in-chief at this point. Trump, as usual, is, as they say in Texas, all hat and no cattle. He has a large mouth and a large ego to go with it. Biden doesn't seem to get the point. I'm not sure Trump does either. The center of the problem in the Middle East today is Iran. They are the support for Hamas attack on Israel on October the 7th, for what the Houthis are doing in the Red Sea, for the Hezbollah missile attacks on northern Israel, and for these Iraqi Shia militia attacking American positions. If you want this to stop, you have to make the people truly responsible for it pay the price, and that's in Iran. As Al Haig, Secretary of State, used to say, go to the source.
Go to the source. Now, does that mean bombing Tehran directly? Sanctions? But in Bolton's opinion, neither Trump nor Biden would be handling. I am going to disagree with him. I think Biden came in and disrupted what Trump had in place, and that's why we're in what we're in. But if you need one more thing to keep you awake tonight, I want to share with you an opinion piece written in The Hill by Harlan Ullman, senior advisor at the Atlantic Council, prime author of the Shock and All Military Doctrine. And it begins this way. War with China would be an unmitigated strategic catastrophe. Well, we don't have war with China directly right now, but on the verge. He writes, the U.S. often suffers from historical amnesia and technological hubris. One striking example, since World War II ended, America has lost every war it started. Yes, America has lost every war it started. Vietnam, Afghanistan, the Second Iraq War, and it won the Cold War, which it did not start. He said Saddam Hussein's 1990 invasion of Kuwait provoked an overwhelming response by a large international effort. But after all, where was bin Laden killed? In Pakistan, not Afghanistan. And then he starts talking about dealing with China. He said, suppose China launched an invasion or bombarded Taiwan with a massive air and missile attack. How would we defend Taiwan? And he points out we have to look at what we have. And based on what we have right now, we have basically 1 month's supply of weapons before we would run out, because we've been giving them to everybody like Ukraine. He said, given that likely weapons expenditure rates should a war with China erupt, our capacity for about a month before we run out of inventory. He said the most discussed scenario in the so-called Battle of the Taiwan Straits in defeating a Chinese military invasion and assault on that island needs to be carefully re-examined. It's based on past invasions in World War II and Korea, Normandy in 1944, Okinawa later. You need 5,000 or more ships and small craft, several hundreds, thousands of soldiers and Marines. We don't have that, but China does. They have the mass numbers. Now you go to sleep better at night? The debut of the Rob Carter Show coming up next. Please stick around and hear that. Join us tomorrow. And remember our pledge, one nation under God.
You can follow Larry on Larry Connors USA Facebook. Larry Connors USA Facebook. This is Larry Connors USA. Larry Connors USA.